Welcome to the Unfiltered Tea with Evie podcast, where personal brands and service providers come for honest, anti-sleaze marketing advice that actually works. I'm Evie Tavares, founder of Evie Tavares Branding, and if you're tired of manipulative tactics, sleazy marketing strategies, and feeling like you're the only one who doesn't have your business all together, you're in the right place. On this podcast, we're diving into copywriting, personal branding strategy, business mindset, and balancing business with kids and real life. I'll be bringing in some epic guests, including business experts, to share their insights and real experiences in life and business. You can expect real life stories, tactical tips, and the occasional spicy Evie moment, all served up with your morning cup of tea. So grab your tea, get cozy, and let's get into it. It is time for our next guest episode on the Unfiltered Tea with Evie. And I just wrapped up this conversation and I cannot wait for you to listen because it's so good. And it's with somebody who I really admire. I met fairly early on, again, in my entrepreneur journey, and she's been such an incredible mentor and proof of possibility for what's really possible in entrepreneurship and as a writer as well. There's your little hint. So, without further ado, our next guest, I'm going to start saying that with all of them. I really like that. Our next guest. Okay. Our next guest is Carly Ottaway. Carly is the best-selling author of Coming Home, creator of The Mirror Effect, and founder of the award-winning boutique marketing agency Web of Words. Through her work and writing, Carly leads by going first. She shows up in vulnerability and truth to give others permission to do the same. Carly believes that when we share our stories and step into our favorite versions of self, we unlock a ripple effect of courage, connection, and possibility that can't be stopped. After losing her home in a fire in the midst of the pandemic, while leading a thriving business and raising 2 young kids, Carly learned firsthand what it takes to do the hard inner work and turn the breakdown into the becoming. Now she helps others see the truth of who they are and believe in what's possible when they come home to themselves. Lean in and enjoy the episode with Carly. Welcome back to the Unfiltered Tea with Evie. I am so beyond excited to have Carly Ottaway here with us today. Carly, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited. You and I we're in the same industry, and something that I always love is collaboration over competition. I feel like that's a mindset that we both have, and I feel like you bring so much to the table in what you do. So I'm so excited to kind of dive into that with you. And I always like to get started. So if anybody's listening who's not really in your world, tell us a little bit about your backstory in business and how you got into what you're doing.
Yeah, I love sharing this. So we are actually celebrating 11 years in business this month, which is wild. Once you hit that decade mark and you kind of have this like full circle moment of realizing like, not that you've been through it all, but like you've really experienced that full roller coaster ride of entrepreneurship. So things don't surprise you as easily anymore. Not that I'm asking for any new surprises, but for me, I didn't have this plan to build a team or an agency. I started just me, myself, and I just wanted to do what I love, and that was to write and share stories for a living. So that's like kind of just always been something that I've been drawn to, as a kid in terms of how I really felt best expressing myself and following that art throughout school. I went to school for journalism, not technically, it was professional writing with a journalism stream. And I graduated when like social media, I was that generation that Facebook just came right when we were in university. And so social media was very much a social thing. But I graduated when the journalism world was going through a big shift from print to digital. And I feel like my education hadn't caught up yet to that. So I had to really, I was so self-taught in that space and really kind of like completely on my own after graduating and having to figure it out and build my portfolio and build my network. And so naturally, I fell into social media just to build out my own portfolio and to do some freelance writing for publications. And then I ended up getting some positions at different magazine for like staff writer role. And then I eventually worked for a social media startup in Toronto and built up some experience there. And then made that decision that I really realized that I was meant to do this on my own. I'm not as employable as maybe I thought I was. And I took that leap with very little. Like I had one client, a $300 retainer, no safety net except that my husband still had a, cushiony job. So that helped for sure. And yeah, I just started doing it on my own. And so I was doing social media management. Eventually I fell into doing copywriting, similar to you, where it just kind of like naturally, that was the next step. And my clients were looking for it. And I was like, hey, I can do this. This is what I love to do. This is great. And then about a year kind of into the business, I was at that growth stage where I knew that I had to make a decision if it was just going to continue to be me or if I was going to grow something bigger than myself. And that's when I made the crazy decision to ask my husband to join me, which was not part of the plan. And he said yes. And I say often, I'm so grateful for how naive we were back then and also just the limited responsibilities and bills that we had. That was pre-kids, the world really was our oyster. And I feel like we just were two kids that felt like anything was possible. And that has really been our perspective when building out the business. And so since then, we've grown it together. We've built a team. We're a full marketing agency, and we really help brands step into their authority and show the world who they truly are and show off their superpowers. And we do that through building them an online presence that supports who they are authentically at their most authentic essence.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I love that you work with your husband. Like, I think that's such a cool way to run a business. And I'm curious, did he always kind of want to join, or was it like a new, fresh conversation when that happened?
No, I think I completely freaked him out when I just blurted that out at the dinner table. He was working for like an experiential marketing company at the time, and he was also ready for a change. And we were just on totally different schedules. I had all this freedom, right? That I was working from home and he was commuting to the city. So he'd come home at like 7:00 and I would be like, oh my God, let's go out. I need to get out of the house. And he'd be like, I am ready to crash on the couch. He had his like very boundary paid vacation time, whereas I could work from anywhere. And so we just realized that we weren't on the same page. We were kind of like two ships at that time, where it felt like we had the opportunity to be so much more flexible than what our schedules were allowing. So I think it was heavily driven by that, but it was a huge learning curve for him. He did not know the online marketing world. He did not know like working from home, let alone working for himself. And we just figured it out together.
Yeah. That's awesome. I always consider you to be like an incredible storyteller. And something that you talk a lot about is old stories that aren't true for people. So can you kind of walk us through what that looks like in practice, letting go of those old stories? Like, is there a story that you had to let go of? And what did that kind of look like for you?
Yes. Oh my gosh, so many. I think, when I say how powerful our stories are, there's two ways of looking at that. One is truly the story that we're here to share and, that we're living and experiencing, and how powerful it is to share that with other people and to be that proof of possibility for them. And then the other is also the power of these stories that live in our subconscious thoughts that actually run the show the majority of the time, that have, we've been conditioned to believe that they are true from probably very young age. And part of our work on this earth, I think, is to develop the self-awareness to really understand what those stories are when we're making decisions from those stories that aren't true versus the ones that are true. And that's what I love about entrepreneurship too, is how it's such a journey in personal development, especially when it comes to your marketing and your personal brand and how you're showing up. There's so many blocks to work through, and being seen and being visible and feeling like you're enough, and all the questions and the self-doubt and the limiting belief that you have to work through. It's a constant work in progress. So I am still working through these stories. I still feel them creeping up. But when I really started digging into the inner work and doing the unblocking work to actually understand where those stories are not true. And for me, a big one that was really running the show was that story of not enoughness. I just never felt like I was smart enough, or I was doing enough, or I was innovative enough. And it really held me back, and it made me play small. And so I had to dig in and do a lot of that reprogramming. And that's really a lot of that was also done in my journey in writing my book and publishing my book. Because oh my gosh, talk about being seen and working through all your fears and visibility, right? And putting yourself out there, especially if it's a vulnerable story that you're sharing. And yeah, it tested me in all those same ways. And I feel like I'm even on the other side now. Again, I'm going through it again as I'm experiencing another evolution in my business and more growing pains. And so it's just like, it's so important to have those tools to be able to do that work.
And speaking of those tools, you also recently launched Rewrite the Narrative. It was
Yes.
brand new for you, like from what I can tell, totally different from anything you've ever done before.
Yeah.
And I was also in it and loved it. So I want to talk about that quickly without giving away all of the secrets, because I know that there's more coming with that. But what's one narrative that you see in other people a lot that they're really clinging to? Like, I know that yours was feeling like you're not enough. Is there one that you see a lot of other entrepreneurial women dealing with?
Well, can I reflect that back on you, Evie?
Sure, you
Would you
can.
share
Yeah.
yours? Because I would love yours was such a powerful shift. And I think when we share it, again, it helps other people see themselves in our own stories too.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, mine was similar to yours. It was feeling like you're not enough, not smart enough, not educated enough, not good enough, all of these things. And it just kind of like paralyzes you into not taking that forward action. But yeah, what I really loved about the program was diving into the root of that, where that came from, and really reflecting on that, and then shedding that old story and writing a new one, which again, rewrite the narrative. You're rewriting a new story for yourself. And I think, like you said, in entrepreneurship, that's such an important thing to do for us to be able to show up for our businesses.
Yeah. And how empowering is that to just really ultimately know that we hold the pen? We are the author of our own story. We get to choose and decide. And of course, there's circumstances and experiences that are out of our control, but that is part of the character development. That's the plot twist to our story. It's what makes us who we are. But thank you so much for sharing that. I think there's also the opposite of that of like, I'm too much. So then we hear those stories of, especially if that was kind of something that hit in childhood where someone was told they were too much or their emotions were too big, they're too emotional, and so then they were forced to downplay themselves and hide. And another big one is just not unworthy or undeserving. And I think that's a common one that we hit in any up level too, is like really having to train yourself to understand that you are so worthy of this success, this abundance, these opportunities that are coming your way. And again, you might not feel like that on the surface because a lot of this is living in your subconscious. So when you actually commit to doing the work, it reveals so much for you and that's where I think the magic is that awareness. Because
Mhm.
once you know what the story is, then you get to rewrite it. Then you're in the driver's seat again.
Yeah, absolutely. You touched briefly on talking about writing your book, which was a very vulnerable experience for you. And I think you said to me before that you would have written it for yourself and locked it away in a drawer and not published it. And that journey in itself was enough for you. But I'm curious, what surprised you most about how people responded to your book when you did put it out into the world?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I when I said that, and I still believe that, but I think that was also like before it was kind of early in the publishing journey. And now that I've gone through the publishing, I'm just like, wow, like so grateful for all the growth that brought because there's so much value to just writing the story and hiding it in the drawer. So I do believe that exercise alone is so incredible and so therapeutic and healing. But then the next level of sharing that and putting it out into the world and exposing yourself in a way that lets you be the mirror to other people and they see their story in you. And Evie, you and I had some beautiful conversations just in terms of what that reflected back for you. And to me, that was like so validating of the impact that I dreamed of having. Like it really is just that individual impact of those stories that I've heard from readers who have picked out very specific stories or scenarios or examples that I shared, some of which I honestly like remember being so close to cutting out and editing out in the editing process because it was so scary to share and put it out there. But I'm so glad that I didn't. And I think that's a reminder too, when it comes to what you're sharing, even online, I think first there's a big difference between the long form creative process versus the short form marketing, which like comes into podcasting too, how beautiful it is to be able to have these conversations that are that long form content.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're hesitating on that post that's sitting in your drafts that you are really like not even maybe you don't even know why you're hesitating, but there's something holding you back. Often that is exactly the post or the story that your community needs to hear from you. And it's not until you share it that you realize that. And then you get those DMs that are like, oh my God, this happened to me, or this is exactly what I needed to hear today. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think that's like my life's work. I'm here to, I'm an Aries. I know you're not like super woo, but I'm like an astrology girly, and it's Aries. We're heading into a big Aries year, actually. So I'm like, I'm ready to go. But, Aries are big action takers and kind of trailblazers, and they have to be prepared to lead the way. And for a long time, I think I resisted that because it's so scary to go first, because it's quiet when you go first. There's not a lot of validation because people haven't really walked that path yet. And you have to be willing to walk it first and reach your hand back and bring them along. And that's the exciting part. That's where like so much magic and power comes from.
And let's say that somebody's kind of sitting on a story that they know they need to share. Like you said, they might be like hesitating a little bit, but they're terrified to put it out there. Is there anything internally that they can do first to put themselves in a position that they're willing to hit post or write the book or tell their story in some way? What's the inner work that has
Yes, I
to
love that
happen?
question. So one of the things I love to do with whether it's kind of a story like that or like a decision I have to make or hard conversation I have to have, I like to do this exercise where I actually go to the worst case scenario, and I think that happens a lot in business, right? Where whether it's like having to break up with a client or let a team member go, those really hard decisions that I don't feel like I'm cut out for most of the time. But it's like, go to that worst case scenario and then really just let yourself paint the picture. Okay, what is the worst case scenario? And then it's kind of like, but actually, is that true? Is that actually realistic? And once you get it out there and you name it, you reclaim your power over it. And then you can rewrite it. And then you can and also prepare yourself and say, okay, if that is the worst case scenario, I can handle it. I think with like putting your story out there in this kind of like cancel culture that I feel like we're recovering from, I don't know, are we still in it? I'm not really sure.
I have to say.
Still feels like a thing and a fear. And so when it came to the publishing process, I kind of had to go through that because I remember when I hadn't shared my story with anyone but my husband, like he was the only one who had read it. And then I started sharing with early readers. And that first week of sharing it was quiet because I shared it, of course, with all these entrepreneurs that are doing a million things and not immediately binging my book as soon as they receive it. And wow, the discomfort of that quiet when I really had to validate myself and like live in that internal validation of really believing and trusting that my story deserves to be shared. It's powerful as it is. It's more than enough. The right people are going to resonate with it, and like really coaching myself through that. And then I got that feedback from the readers, and it validated again that impact that I was dreaming to have. But I think preparing yourself for the worst case scenario just again claims your ownership and your power over that. And then you look at all the things that you can do that are in your control from there as well. And for me, like when I was like, okay, worst case scenario with my book, I get canceled. and I'm like, then I just pick up my family and I move to some exotic country and go into hiding. And would that be so bad? No, I could handle it. I also just am a big believer that when there's so much out of your control and when you can surrender, there's so much beauty in that. And I really believe that, we are on our path for a reason too. And there's whatever comes our way is nothing that we can't handle, and not to downplay the challenges. But yeah, I think that's again where that character development comes from and what really makes us who we are.
Mm-hmm. And I love the story of kind of the journey of writing your book. So just for the sake of people who don't know the story, I know you did it in like a very short timeline. So can you tell us a little bit about that too?
So I didn't actually write my book in a short timeline, but it feels like that because I did so much last year, like so much came to life in the last year.
Right.
But I had been working on my book. I'd been writing it and made the decision to actually go all in on it. I think it was January of 2023. I made that decision because again, like I'm a goal setter, manifestation girly. And so when it came to like January, where I'm looking at, what's that goal at the top of my list? What's the big manifestation for this, this year, the years ahead? And my book was always on the list at near the top and always got bumped to the bottom And then every year I'd put it back up to the top. And so finally that January, I was like, no, this is the year I'm actually taking this seriously. And the first thing I did was invest in some coaching to support me with that and, put some skin in the game. And I joined a mastermind. So I surrounded myself in the community and I really started writing and carving out that time in my day to write, which was not easy. I had 2 young kids, especially at a time that they were like constantly getting sick, and I'm running a business and I had every excuse, but I knew that if I had to build that self-trust with myself that I was going to do what I said I was going to do. So I carved out that time in my day, usually after the kids went to bed, and wrote and just let myself write and let it come out of me. And then it was January of 2025 that I went to a business retreat hosted by Christina and Jeanette. At the time, it was the Boss Mode retreat. Now they're doing the High Vibe Women retreats. And that was just a really big turning point for me. Again, it was January, so it was that fresh year kind of mentality, and something just clicked. And I decided that this is the year I'm actually publishing my book. And at the time, I was probably halfway through the manuscript, the rough draft. So I still had a long way to go, but that lit a fire under me and the words just started pouring out of me. And I felt like I finally could see the end of my story too, although it's never the end. It's, that I couldn't see at all when I started writing. And yeah, I got a publisher, got the book deal locked in, and made it happen and published that following October, which when I look back, I'm like, holy, that was crazy.
That was crazy. Yeah, but it was so cool to watch that whole journey, because you also shared all of it, which I think is something that a lot of people miss an opportunity in doing that and bringing their audience along in that journey as well.
Yes. Yeah. And I think I had been quiet in the early stages, which I also think there's space for that, right? Especially when it comes to creative and you can turn the lights out when you need to just put your head down and do the work. So first, just permission giving with that we have this expectation as online business owners that we have to be online all the time. And I think it's more just being really intentional about when you're online and how you're online. So I actually had gotten more quiet with myself, and I really had to stop consuming. And, I wasn't reading as many books. I wasn't listening to as many podcasts. I was just in creation phase. And then I got to the point where I was able to start sharing. And I don't mean that because I felt like things were polished and tied up with a bow. It just was that I had kind of come out of that creative dungeon that I had to put myself in. And I was like, okay, now I want to hold myself accountable. And so I used my social media and my community as an accountability buddy, really, to help me achieve this dream, and kind of unintentionally brought them along for the ride. Just, it wasn't that I had planned that as a marketing plan, to be honest. I was just I'm going to show up and share this and share my process. And I know how much people appreciate the process. So it was really fun. I had fun with it, and it brought another different kind of joy to the experience too. And I shared the hard parts and the fun parts, and the hard parts are always harder to share too. But
Yeah.
it really felt like I created this cocoon of community around me that then were so invested in the journey with me too, and blew me away when it came to the launch. And, yeah.
Yeah. Shifting gears a little bit.
Yeah.
So you are a best-selling author, business owner, but you're also a mom.
Yes.
And so you scaled a business while being a mom to young kids without losing yourself. What did that all look like for you? How did you manage to do that?
I remember after having my first baby and hearing people talk about how you lose yourself in motherhood, and it never hit for me because I'm like, what? I feel more like myself than I've ever been. Motherhood just kind of felt like it awakened this other part of my identity that I didn't even know existed. And then time goes on and a pandemic hits, and then baby number 2 comes, and then I'm building a business and parenting with my husband with no village. And suddenly our house burns down in a fire. And it's kind of like the universe was laughing at, oh, you thought this wouldn't change you? You thought this wouldn't rock you? And I had to surrender in a way that I just never had experienced before. And as a former control freak, type A, I think I thought I was going to be that type A mom. And now I feel so much more type B now, and so much more go with the flow. And it's wild to kind of reflect back on that. But Yeah, I think motherhood has taught me the most powerful lessons and really let me give myself so much grace and just really shown me what I value most and what's most meaningful to me. And I think there was a little bit of time where I did lose myself a little bit, but I caught myself in that.
Mhm.
And I trusted, where I knew that it was just a season and held on to that perspective. It put me on this healing journey where I really had to invest in myself and my own healing because I knew that in order to show up as the mom I want to be for my kids, I have to show up that way for myself first.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love
And
that.
that's the most important work.
Mhm.
And yeah, so then that sent me into meditation and cold plunging and creating all this space for stillness in my life that I never had before at like the most chaotic time, but the most necessary time. And yeah, that stillness like brought me home.
Mhm. I think that's such a big thing for moms, like, of our generation, that it's so hard to find peace in that stillness and in rest, and it's something that a lot of us struggle with, and it takes that inner work to come out of that.
Oh my God, yeah. I get so overstimulated. I forget what it's called. There's a term for, and it's actually in my human design, which is crazy how deep that can go. But it's like this real sensitivity to certain noises, like these certain repetitive noises. I've always had it. And I always thought like it's something that everyone felt. And then I realized that no, not everyone gets nearly as irritated or overstimulated as I do with these certain sounds. And then you bring
Mhm.
parenthood into that, where like it's noisy all of the time. And there's so many things going on. And yeah, I think it's that much more important to be able to create those little boundaries and find the little moments in your day. I remember when I first started meditating, I thought I was so horrible at meditating because I would fall asleep every time immediately. And I was like, no, that's just actually what my body needed. And that's what the practice was giving me. And then over time that shifted, as I got out of that survival mode of like being so sleep deprived. So I think just reflecting back, and for anyone who's in it, just reminding you that everything is a season, and that goes both ways for the hard and the good,
Mhm.
but at the same time, there's so much to look forward to. And I think that's what's been so cool as my kids are 7 and 4 now. And I feel like every season becomes my favorite season. And how incredible is that? And like, of course, like I still get nostalgic for the newborn bubble and those days. But at the same time, I'm like, thank goodness I don't have to strip my kid out of his snowsuit to put him in a car seat to get in the car right now. I'm out of that
Mhm.
season and it feels so good.
Right?
The kids can buckle their own seatbelts. So yeah, I think just like being able to give yourself the space to be present, to enjoy the season that you're in, you'll never regret that.
Mhm.
You'll never regret that.
Yeah, I love that. Is there kind of a misconception about being a mom in business that you've seen that you would kind of like to call out?
Ooh, yeah. I feel like so much has changed since my days of early motherhood. Like for me, I remember very much thinking there was no way I could be an ambitious entrepreneur and the mom I wanted to be for my kids. And I didn't know if motherhood was even in the cards for me because of that, because I felt so career focused and driven. And since then, I've learned just how much motherhood has expanded me, expanded my capacity, and like created so much growth in my business, in myself, in my career path. And, I never would have been able to picture that because I also didn't really have the examples of that, that were close enough. I didn't know a lot of women at the time when I had kids who had a business first and then had their kids. A lot of the women kind of in my immediate circle at that time had started their business while they were on maternity leave and were really not wanting to go back or just like didn't go back and then started the business. And so then I started that exposure is so important. And I started finding those women and getting in the circles of people who were doing what I wanted to do and who had the shared beliefs and values that I had and were proving that it's actually possible and it's not some pipe dream. And so then they had already walked that path and I got to walk it behind them, but in my own way because
Mhm.
that they had, done the bushwhacking for me. Um, Yeah, so there's so much power. And again, that circles back to the importance of sharing your story, because thank
Mhm.
goodness they were showing up and sharing the real and the raw of it, so that I didn't just feel like, oh my God, they have it all together. Like, this is so easy for them and it's so hard for me. No, they were sharing the challenges along with the wins. And that really helped me feel seen and helped me believe that it was possible, because they didn't just show that it was just some perfect life that they had built that felt would feel so unattainable to me, and just make me feel like I, was losing the game because I was not in that space. So I still think we need some work there. I still think people are figuring out how to show up in that way and share the hard with the good and the highlights. But we've made so much progress, which is so exciting to me.
And I feel like that ties in nicely to something that you kind of brought about through your book and talk about a lot in your book, which is the mirror effect. Can you tell us a little bit about that, what it is, why you created it?
Yeah. Yeah. I just really have this belief that, and it started kind of when I was doing the inner work, and really what you project is what you attract. So you see it show up in so many ways in the circles of people you surround yourself. The energy you're getting back is who you're attracting back to you. I mean, in business, we see it from a brand perspective, from a messaging, like the message you're putting out there, the energy you're putting out there is who you're attracting back. So that's always the first place I go to. If you're kind of working with clients that are not feeling like the right fit, that's actually not a them problem, it's a you problem. And what are you mirroring and reflecting out that is attracting those clients in? But the most powerful mirrors for me that really hit the message home for me were my kids. Because holy smoke, they will be a mirror to you in the moments that just like make you so emotional, like, oh my gosh. And then also really are a reality check. Like,
Yeah.
shoot, she gets that from me. She's feeding off my energy right now. They humble us so quickly. And it's been so cool for me, like in the process of writing my book, where, I'm doing my own kind of inner child work and really deep in it and my inner child healing. And then I have my, at the time, 6-year-old daughter, who is literally like the 6-year-old version of me, journaling beside me on the couch. That was when my love for writing started. And she is mirroring me and just watching my every move. And I think you realize pretty quickly in parenthood that your kids don't so much listen to what you say as they see what you do and how powerful your actions are. And so it's cool, since like now we're on this little fitness journey together. And my daughter is like actually become my greatest accountability buddy. And she's the one that's asked me like, Mom, are we lifting weights today? And I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't feel like working out, but now I got to. And how amazing is that, that we get to have them to hold us accountable, and to like, I think one of our greatest lessons is building our own self-trust so that we can teach them how to build their self-trust and to follow through and do what they say they're going to do. And that starts with us. So I went on a bit of a tangent there, but that's what I believe the mirror effect is. It really is looking inside to what you are putting out into the world and recognizing how that is coming back to you. But again, it gives you the power back. It puts the power back in your hands.
And what gap do you kind of see in the personal branding space that this mirror effect really fits in?
Yeah, I think people are still confused with personal brand, that it kind of is like comes with this facade. And I'm very much realizing how, just recognizing the challenge of like, people have a hard time just being themselves online. And it makes sense because we've been so conditioned to perform, whether that's through school. I definitely was that. I like was so fake it till you make it in school. And thank goodness for my essays where I could just bullshit my way through because I was a good writer. And that's kind of where I actually like really understood my skills and gifts that I had for that. But yeah, I think we've just been so conditioned to show up with a mask and perform and really like become the chameleon, the version of ourselves that we think this specific circle of people expects us to be. Whether that's the client or, the audience online or stepping onto stage. And I think there is an element of that where we do have different parts of ourselves. I show up differently in motherhood than I do stepping onto a stage in front of 200 women, entrepreneurs, like high achieving women. Of course, I'm not going to talk to them in the same way that I talk to my kids necessarily. But really, in order to show up as yourself, you have to know yourself first.
Mm.
And I think so many of us haven't done that work to like truly get to know ourselves and understand ourselves. And for me, like astrology and human design has been so helpful with that. It's become a really cool mirror to reflect back and just validate, why I am the way that I am. And yeah, I think that's another cool thing about motherhood. I remember like when you go from one kid to two, where you kind of like have your first kid and then you just think that's how kids are because that's your first experience. Like maybe you've had other like your nieces and nephews, but like your first one that, you get fully exposed to in that way. And then you have the second one, you're like, oh, wow, this is different. That is my kid who's so unique in this way. And then this kid's so unique in this way. Now I have to adapt my parenting styles to, their ways of receiving feedback and all the things again, why I love knowing their human design too, to understand those parts about them. But yeah, it really is so fascinating and just like really recognizing how unique we all are. We are
Mhm.
all so unique, but then at the same time have very similar blocks and challenges and, like connection points. But yeah, I think the better you know yourself, then the better you're able to show up authentically.
I agree. And I think that that's kind of like the order that sometimes people get wrong when
Hmm.
they're marketing themselves, they're marketing their business. They're looking at all the things they should be doing. I should be showing up on social media, email list, all of these things. But if you don't know yourself first, your unique voice, your unique positioning, all of these things first,
Yes.
then it's not going to stand out and it's not going to be you.
Yes. And that's what gives you the clarity and confidence when you have the foundation, in your messaging and you can rely back on that and then really ultimately in your beliefs and your core values is what that is tied to. So
Hmm.
that when you catch yourself in those moments of like, oh shoot, this colleague or this, other industry peer posted on this, I should do that. I should show up this way. And you can catch yourself and actually be like, okay, but is this actually aligned with my goals, with my brand voice, with my values? And bring yourself back to that and really stay rooted in that.
Hmm. Yeah. I think I've noticed that too. Like, cause I'm like, oh, sometimes I feel like I need to show up as more of an authority and with like an expert voice, but then I try to do it and it feels so unnatural. And it's like, that's just not, if that's not who you are, that's okay. Like, you have to show up in a way that's natural.
And authority looks different for all of us. So
Hmm.
your authority, Evie, doesn't look like the next person's authority, but you
Yeah.
still are building it in your own unique way. And it doesn't mean your voice has to sound a certain way to build authority. Well,
Hmm.
you're building authority right now by speaking your truth on this platform and showing up and sharing the vulnerable parts and teaching your own methodologies and your own learnings. Like that's how you build authority.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yes.
Why I love you. Okay. So I think that pretty much wraps up everything that I wanted to talk about.
Yay.
Um, My thing with guests is to put you through a little bit of a rapid fire question at the end, if
Yes.
you're up for that.
Can
Oh,
we also just talk for a moment about your first episode and
yes.
like when I heard you do your own rapid fire and mention my book coming home and I was driving and I just like suddenly got so choked up. It totally caught me off guard. I'm like tears streaming down my face like because it was such a cool full circle moment for me and like I said it was just like I wasn't expecting it at all. I'm like here thinking about how proud I am of you starting the
Oh.
podcast, sharing and how cool your story was and hearing it told in a way that I'd never heard you share it before.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, you're being that mirror reflecting back like exactly the impact that I am hoping to have, and that's, I think it's just like such an example of the community that we're building, who we're
Mhm.
attracting into it, and like just like the power of women supporting women and really show, speaking the names of the people that have had an impact for you in the spaces that you're in. So anyway, I'm so
Yeah.
grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to make sure, like, that other people read the book because it's like it had such a huge impact on my life and on me and my business, and so, yeah, I'm gonna link it in the show
Um,
notes, and people need to go grab it, so
Thank you so much.
Okay, speaking of books, for the rapid fire question. What is the last book that really had an impact on you? And you're allowed to say your own book if you want.
Well, actually, I'm reading so I started a book club this year, a business
Okay.
club, and it's an in-person meetup, but people are welcome to follow along online. I'll be sharing the books. And the first book that we voted in was The Science of Scaling by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. I mean,
Mhm.
anything that he writes But this one just hit me differently, and I think it's just, like, the power of when you read the right message at the right time, and I'm just at a stage of growth in my business where I know, like, we're kind of at that point where we've hit a bit of a plateau, and we need to do things way differently to get the results that I know that we're capable of getting and where I want
Mhm.
to see us next. And so it's been, like, really helping me rethink our whole business model, honestly, which is, like, equally terrifying as it is exciting. And, like, I've had a lot of clarity on where I see the business going, but then I'm like, oh, it's like this urgency kind of feeling within me where I'm like, I want to be there now, and I still need to take all these steps to get there, and I need to be patient with that.
Mhm.
But I think writing my own book reminded me of, like, the power of forgetting the how and just, like, trusting in the vision and taking one step at a time. And also just every time I read a book like that, it reminds me of the power of books and, like, picking up the right book at the right time. And I'm not typically a big rereader because there's so many books that I want to read, and
Mhm.
but I do have a few core ones that I'll turn back to, and I've heard people give me that feedback about coming home too, which is, like, just that's what, and or it's like they wanna go back to the journal prompts because maybe they read it all in one go, and
Mhm.
I think that's the beauty. Like, I just I'm such a book lover, so maybe it's an encouragement to revisit a book that, kinda struck you in one way, and maybe it's gonna be a whole different experience the next time you pick it up.
Mm, mhm. Yeah,
I'm not good at rapid fire, I ramble too much.
no, that's okay. When you feel like your creativity is kind of dripping or dipping, because I know that we all kind of experience that at times, what's something that really brings it back for you?
Yeah. It really is that stillness that I create with myself. I loved your tips that you shared about the apps. Actually, I need to revisit that and create some boundaries about that. But, like, unplugging, definitely turning off the notifications.
Mhm.
And typically for me, it's getting in nature. So I, like, love to go for a meditative nature walk. And whether that's, like, truly, sometimes I'll listen to a meditation on a walk or I'll listen to a podcast on a walk, but also prioritizing just a quiet walk where I'm not filling my ears with noise and
Mhm.
listening to the birds. I've, like, had so much fun stepping into my bird watching season. And I also just, like, believe in signs from the universe, especially through nature. So literally before we recorded this podcast, a hawk was flying outside my window,
Really?
like a really powerful symbol for me. And it just, like, I feel like it's always just that nudge, in different ways. Like, of course, different animals, you can look up the spiritual meaning, and they have different meanings, but it just kind of feels like that nudge of, like, you're on the right path, when
Mhm.
you're seeing the signs. And so just being really aware of those. And then that's where I typically, like, get a download or something comes through. It's not when I'm scrolling and get lost in, what everyone else is doing. It's when I get still with myself. Journal is another big one for me.
Mhm.
But I have to get myself back into my journaling practice. Like, I definitely am someone who falls off and then I'll, like, get back and go all in, and then I'll fall off again for a little bit. So
Yeah.
that's okay. That's kind of
And
my
I
process.
I find that journaling, like, I'll do it for a while, but then sometimes I almost get too much in my head and, like, I'm not doing that stillness that you said, like, I'm too
Right.
much in my brain. I need to get out of the house, like, have that quiet, peaceful time and not sometimes I just need a little break from journaling,
Yes.
but then, yeah, it's a great practice to come back to.
I think especially because we've monetized our passion for writing.
Mhm.
And so it's that much more important that A, you find ways to, like, tap into the craft of it again and just write for fun,
Mhm.
whether that's journaling or something else, but also, like, really give yourself space from it in ways too. Whereas maybe before that was a little bit more of a tool that you could use. Now you actually need some extra space from it because you're doing it so much in so many different ways.
Yeah. That's where the sourdough comes in.
Yes. Yeah.
We'll start crocheting soon.
Oh my god, I want to too.
What is a guilty pleasure that has nothing to do with work?
Ooh. I like to watch a bad reality TV show for
Mhm.
sure. I find, holy smoke, sometimes it's just so hard to turn my brain off. And I think especially, like, yeah, juggling kind of business and parenthood too, right? And just, like, the to-do list is never ending, and you cross so many things off that have been lingering for a while, and then the new ones show up. And so I just, like, sometimes need to just put on a bad TV show and let myself get lost in it and finally tune out everything else, turn my brain off. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. If you could uninvent one marketing trend, what would it be and why?
Ooh. Oh my gosh. I feel like there's probably so many. Kind of what comes to my mind, it was, like, the whole trend around using your revenue as like an authority building and that, when that was so big in the coaching industry, which didn't
Mm-hmm.
impact me so much myself because it was never a part of my own marketing tactics, but like it felt like a huge issue in the coaching industry that just made everything so based on like success was so defined by a monetary value. And I think it really distracted us from what actually matters. Not that the money doesn't matter. Of course, the money lets us fulfill a lot of the other things that actually matter more. But I think it just like created so many blinders on that and then like did some damage to people's own self-image too and feeling like they're never enough because they're not hitting those numbers when meanwhile they actually have a lifestyle that is like their dream that they were dreaming of 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it really took a lot of people off course. So that's one that I would like to erase.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that one. Cause yeah, I was one of those people that it's like, I'm not making this much money. Everybody else is, and I'm failing because I'm not making that much money. And it's like, think about what you actually have built and what it's allowed you to do. Like, what more could you want? Seriously.
Exactly. And I think there will always be like kind of this number that feels out of reach. Like, when I was starting, it was like that hitting six figures was like
Mhm,
the end game. But now it's like 6 figure months and
mhm,
hitting seven figure business and, 8 figure. Like it kind of just reminds you that it's actually always going to feel just out of reach. So it's so important to find other ways of measuring your success.
mhm.
And then I think there's also the point of like then what because you realize also once you hit that milestone that it wasn't actually about that at all.
Yeah, and it just brings more troubles
Yeah.
sometimes too, right?
Yeah.
Like,
More
more
money, more problems.
more money, more problems.
Totally.
Um, okay, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever received and actually followed?
Well, you think I would have prepared for these questions after, but I didn't remember any of them.
I make them different for everybody, so it's
Okay,
well, a
amazing.
little bit.
Best piece of advice, that's tough. I really feel like I was instilled in me from a young age that anything is possible. I do feel very grateful that I feel like my parents painted that picture for me, and I think in their own way maybe demonstrated what I didn't wanna do because of the sacrifices that they made at that time, and, I did feel very encouraged to pursue a different path and to really like believe my dreams were possible. And at the time, I don't think I knew how big I could actually dream. My dreams were still pretty small, but I do feel like there's so much freedom in that. So it's kind of a cliche one, but it's one I just really also try to instill in my own kids too, is to help them have that belief that there is no limit on their dreams. And yeah, they already have everything within them to make that a reality.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good one. What's one thing about you that would surprise people?
I love this question. Sometimes I feel like I share so much of myself, but there's so much that I don't share.
Mhm,
It's kind of hard to have that. It's always, it's impossible to like see yourself the way that like you are viewed online. You
mhm,
just don't have that lens because of course you're living the reality. But I'm actually like a private person in a lot of ways, which might surprise people, and I'm I'm a very emotional person, like, I'm really, like again, I'll bring the astrology into it, I'm a Scorpio moon, so I'm, like, super I like to go deep, and I'm, like sometimes that can be to a fault, and I have a lot of I'm an empath, and sometimes I'm actually find myself being over responsible for other people's feelings.
mhm,
That's actually something I'm kind of working through right now too, especially in business where I tend to quickly jump into over delivering because as soon as somebody else has a problem, it's my problem. I take that
mm,
problem on to myself and I I need a boundary around that. It's not sustainable for me to do that. Of course, I want to be meeting them with compassion and that's a superpower of mine, but I also have to be really careful when I am becoming over responsible for other people's emotions, whether that's people in my personal life or my professional life. So that's something that I'm just like extra that's top of mind for me right now.
mhm.
Yeah. Would you have known that about me? I don't know.
I don't think well, I think, like you said, like, there's, like, the version of you that shows up online, which is still you, but then there is that other part of you, and, like, that is private, and I think there has to especially with personal brands, there has to be a boundary because it's like you're marketing your personal brand isn't supposed to be like an expose magazine sharing everything about your life. Like you're allowed to
Yes.
have that private part of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why like the whole kind of influencer world of especially what it used to be never appealed to me because
Mhm.
I don't want to just have a camera out constantly in my kids' faces. They already see enough of that and I'm pretty boundaried around it with them. So, yeah, I think you can absolutely show up and share your real self without sharing every single part of yourself. And it kind of reminds you of like the beauty of when you have those little secrets. Like I remember, for example, when my husband and I first got engaged, and that feeling when it's like only you two, for us at least, it was private. I don't know, not different for public engagements, but like that little bubble where it's like only you two know this like life-changing news and like are living this moment and it feels so magical. And I think it's same as like when you have a baby and you're in the newborn bubble and like
Mhm.
suddenly nothing else matters and it's just like, it's so hard to articulate to anyone else, but you just get to live it and experience it. And I think, just giving yourself permission to live first. We, tend to kind of race to that mentality of like picture didn't happen, post about it
Mm.
or you're missing out. And there's so much power in just like the presence of living it. And so I really feel like we've pulled away from that and need to find ways to tap back into that.
I feel like something that I've really noticed in that regard is like concerts. You go to
Mhm.
concerts, you're only there for 3 hours, and there's some people who have their phones out the
The
entire.
entire time,
I'm like, "Are you actually gonna go back and watch all those videos?" But, like, you're
right?
missing that presence of being there and looking at it with your own eyes. So
Which is
that.
what the concert is actually about.
Yeah.
Totally. And
Yeah.
same with like I think of that too now that I go to my like kids' Christmas concerts.
Mhm.
Like my husband and I usually kind of make an agreement because of course for those ones too, you do want the footage.
Mhm.
And so we'll often say like, okay, you record this one and I'll watch and I'll flip because it's so different watching it in real life versus looking at it through a screen.
Yeah.
Or I'll be very careful with how I hold my screen so that I'm not actually looking through the screen. It's secondary, and if it ends up being a crappy video, so be it. We've lived off of our old VHS tapes. That's all we have to look back on. I
Right?
think I think our kids will deal. They've got a lot. They got plenty of content
Yes.
capturing their childhoods. So let's just live it and
Yeah,
enjoy it.
exactly. One last question for you. I'd love to know what's one collaboration, partnership, or dream client that you're calling in for 2026,
Ooh.
if you're willing to
So
share.
I have one that I was calling in. Did you come to the collab party that Christine and I hosted back?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, in KW, you came to the one at the Den?
Was that, like, 2023?
Probably around then, maybe yeah, or
Yeah.
2024. Might have been 2020. I don't know, around
Yeah,
then.
that was
Yeah.
the last one you guys did, right?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
And we all spoke our dream collaboration out loud.
Mhm.
So that one's coming to life for me, which I'm not gonna share yet because
Yay.
it's still behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But I have a really good feeling about it and stuff is happening, which is so fun because I literally was reflecting back on that, like, oh my gosh, I remember when I spoke this out. And I remember when I was asked that and when I spoke it out, it still felt impossible.
Mhm.
But I was but like we were encouraged. I mean, I had to lead by example because we were literally telling everyone in the room, what is that big dream of that collaboration? And so I was like, I have to go big with this. And I went as big as I could think in the moment. And how cool is that to reflect back on, So I'm right now, I haven't even like been dreaming up the next one right now because I'm living that one and it's coming to fruition and I can't wait to share without saying too much.
Yeah. Okay, so for anybody who wants to see what that is eventually when you do share, where is the best place for people to connect with you?
Yeah, come hang on Instagram. Like, I love it there and for the most part, love hate, but hit up my DMs always. I love having chats and I'd love to hear from you and if there's something about this conversation that resonated, please share. And that's at It's Carly Ottaway, Ottawa with a Y. And yeah, you can also find me at carlyottaway.com for any book stuff. And the agency is webofwords.ca, or you can find us on Instagram at Web of Words.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Carly, for being here and for such an incredible conversation. Can't wait for people to listen in, and we'll chat soon.
Yay. Thank you so much for having me, Evie. I love what you're doing. Keep doing this. Like, this is just the beginning. And I'm so excited to look back a year from now on all your growth because of this. So just celebrating you because it's a big deal.
Thank you. I want to take a quick moment just to thank you so much for joining me in this space and just to encourage you that if there was anything that kind of sparked something for you or that you felt like somebody that you know maybe needed to hear, please feel free to share the episode. And if you are excited to hear more, go ahead and subscribe and listen to more of the episodes. I'm so excited that you're here and I can't wait to continue this journey with you.